Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the Railway. Today we are looking at the latest brand new model from Clark Railworks. So Ellis Clark Trains, or Clark Railworks, have kept this project quite close to their chests until relatively late on in the process. So we haven't known about this for sort of years on end. It's been a relatively quick turnaround from the customer's point of view, but the new model is now here, and it is this, the all-new demountable tank wagon. And this kind of looks like an early pre-grouping tank wagon or something like that, doesn't it? But it's actually not. These were introduced in real life relatively late on, not until the 40s and 50s in fact, which makes them a very useful and versatile model for modelers. They're great for steam era modelers, so if you've got sort of BR steamers, perfect for those. Also ideal for some of those early diesels as well. So I think a surprising number of people will be able to make use of these models. So really interested to see what these are like. So in terms of Clark Railworks, we've seen some of their models before, and I would say the detail is excellent. The attention to detail is excellent as well, and there's a real effort to make these models seriously high quality. But they also tend to be very expensive. So the price of these demountables, for instance, is £40. They're available from Clark Railworks for that, and they're available from Rails of Sheffield, £40. Now obviously it's hard to compare that price because there's nothing else quite like this available. The last new tanker I can recall would be these, the DAPL 14-ton tankers. Even the full RRP is less than £40, and at the retailers you can pick them up for £31.95. So these are very expensive, but of course the question is, are they worth the money? They're going to be premium models, we can be sure of that, but the question is, are these going to be premium enough to justify £40? I think in the past the value for money has been quite questionable. So with those Lomac wagons, Ellis Clark were unfortunate enough to release theirs just after Rapido, and it turned out that Rapido's cheaper Lomac wagon actually delivered quite a bit more for the money. But it's different this time. There is no competing demountable wagon available. Ellis Clark is the only one, which I think leaves them in a much stronger position. So what is this like? We're going to find out today. There's lots of different versions of these tanks available, including one wagon which doesn't have a tank at all. This is a propeller carrying wagon, as seen at Didcot. So if you are interested in checking out this range, I do have affiliate links down in the description. For now though, let's take a look and see what this is like. So look at the size of this box. It is absolutely tiny. To say there is a £40 model in here, they must have crammed quite a lot into a pretty small package. The other thing about the price of these though, apparently you don't need many of these to put a realistic rake together. Apparently they could run in as little as 1 or 2. So it's not as though you've got to buy sort of 20 of these things to make a realistic rake, as much as I do think a rake of 20 of these would look absolutely amazing. But obviously I don't have £800 to spend on that. I've got other things in life I want to do, such as die, before I spend that kind of money. But you know what I mean. You could spend 80 quid and get a couple of these, and that's more attainable, I think, isn't it? Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So like I say, lots to choose from. I went for C3023. It's the demountable tank wagon. That must be the number there. So that's B749028, Bass Charrington, and that's all she wrote. So let's get this open. I have not opened this box off camera, so this will be my first time. Let's see what greets us. Here we go. Right, a little booklet. This is cool. Look at that. There's just something pleasing about the way Clark Railworks does things. Look at the way this fits in the top of the box. Everything just works together. It's a small pointless thing to mention, but I notice these things and I enjoy them. So here we go, demountable tank wagons. Quite a booklet here actually. So there we go, we've got a little bit of background. Pause and read that if you want. I will give you a bit of info later on. Here's a list of the different models they've done. Removing the NEM coupling pocket and mount, so that's something you can do if you want. You can see we've got brake rigging there as well. Okay, so it looks like that's quite a process. NEM couplings. We've got cosmetic couplings, which we will see. So again, lots of features on offer here, which is really good to see. Now this is also good to see. Demountable tanks, you would hope that you could remove them from the chassis. Apparently you can. It looks as though you disengage the chains and remove the tank. Very nice. Same with the propeller loads there, very interesting. And switching to EM or P4 wheel sets, so this is something that's been provided for with this tooling. That's very good, and that's it. So yeah, lovely little booklet. The model though, let's have a look. Removing the foam. Not seen one of these in the flesh yet. Oh gosh, wow, yeah, that is a tiny little thing, isn't it? But beautiful, and already you can see how much detail there is on here. All right, we'll get to that in just a second. Let's just see what we do get in the bag here. So quite a few little bits and bobs actually. We do have the cosmetic screw link couplings. I have to say I have seen better. These are just molded in the static position. Yeah, I prefer them when they are sort of movable. Some people like to actually use these things to couple. I suppose you could do, but it's not going to move very realistically. That could have been better for the money. And then we've got various pipe work and such for the buffer beams, I assume. There's also some instanter couplings in there as well. It's not very often we get multiple coupling options. So yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, on the whole, nice inclusions to have. I'm glad that there are couplings here at all, as opposed to missing entirely. Right, let's pull this out. I think I'll do it with the plastic. All right, and lifting up. And you know what, except for the tank, this is a very spindly little model, except it still weighs quite a bit. There is a die-cast chassis on this model, which makes it weigh more than you'd expect. But yeah, straight away, I look at this, I think 40 pounds. I can see there's a lot of complexity here. I can totally see why it should cost that. Now, the question is, did it need this much complexity? Does it need these many features? Is that what people want in rolling stock? Well, I'm not here to answer that question today, because of course, if you want all of that on your rolling stock, it's going to cost £40. Whether that's the right approach, I'm not sure, but that is the approach Ellis Clark has taken with this model, and it certainly is impressive no matter what you think about the price. So yeah, there's going to be, I can tell, a lot to take in with this model. I'll attempt that in just a second, but first let's have a bit of background on these tankers in real life. The demountable tank wagons were usually built for specific companies in small batches throughout the 1940s and 50s, with 114 being built in total. Intended for the transportation of beer and alcohol, the tanks were removable, or indeed demountable, so that they could be loaded and unloaded from the wagons using a crane or similar. They were used for this purpose until the late 1970s, when they were either withdrawn or repurposed. Some were used by engineers for other purposes. Like I say, Clark Railworks have done that version carrying propellers, as seen at Didcot after its 2014 conversion for that purpose, and some went into departmental use, etc. Today, while most of them have been lost to time, a few have survived into preservation. So there it is, up close and personal for you, the Ellis Clark demountable tank wagon, and the verdict is in. I think this is marvellously impressive, and I would say even if you're not planning to put a big rake of these together, even if you're not planning to buy 20 of these, I think I would recommend buying at least one of them, just so that you can have this model and enjoy it and show it to people and appreciate what is a tremendously well done wagon. You know, this is quite an unusual piece of rolling stock. It's not the kind of wagon that we're going to see produced all the time, if ever again, quite frankly. And it's almost like a locomotive in that it is a showpiece. It is a very, very awesome model. So yeah, if you are interested in something like this, if you like the look of it, I would pick one up just so that you've got something awesome like this in your collection. We're going to go over everything this model has, and on the whole, I think it has been done really well, and the quality is fantastic as well. Obviously though, at £40 each, these have to stand up to scrutiny, and there are one or two things I noticed about this that I do want to draw your attention to. So first of all, there's a bit of a question mark over the way these models fit together. The first thing I noticed was that the tank is at a bit of a wonk, and I thought, oh blimey, has this not been assembled properly? But no, I think that at least is how these are supposed to be. So the tanks are drained from this end. You can see we've got a little tap over here. Obviously, when these tanks are drained, you don't want any beer pooling up in the bottom. So the slight angle there makes sure, I assume, everything drains out properly without loads of sort of rotting beer being left in the bottom. And then I'm guessing this door above the tap, which is obviously much larger, I'm guessing that would allow a man, or at least a man with a brush, to get in there and clean them out, obviously for reasons of hygiene. So I'm guessing that's what the wonky tank is for. That's fine. But the way the caddy that holds the tank fits to the chassis isn't great, as you can see. I've tried to reseat it. Obviously the tanks are removable. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be sitting quite straight. Maybe the piece there is a little bit warped, and we've got visible moulding marks on that as well, so worth mentioning that. Also, some of these plates, I think this, for example, is a separate plate. Is it supposed to be a builder's plate? You can't read it. We've got sort of dark lettering printed onto a dark coloured plate, which means from most angles, you just can't read that. Now, I think in real life, the lettering on these plates would kind of stand out from the plate. It would be physically there instead of painted. Obviously though, painted like this just kind of makes it disappear. Yeah, I think for £40, this should have looked better. Maybe the technology isn't available for that. Could we etch lettering that tiny? I'm not sure, but yeah, that's not great. The only other issue I've noticed is that these are not very free rolling. So we do have separate bearings, as you can see. That is absolutely brilliant to see, but nevertheless, the wheels still don't turn very freely. Again, for £40, this is the sort of thing that I think needed to be checked for and addressed. If I was sending out a model and I was asking people to pay £40 for it, I think this kind of thing would need to be sorted before these went out. But I think those are the only real issues I've noticed. Otherwise, this model is amazing. So, like I say, it's a spindly little thing, but it weighs quite a lot. It weighs 34 grams, which is more than a lot of open wagons. It's kind of approaching van territory. That's not bad at all. And of course, the entire chassis here is die-cast, and yet the quality of the moulding is excellent. The rivets look nice and fine. Yeah, it's very, very good. Decoration wise, we have a lot going on here. So we've got the tank. I'm not sure if this is a painted tank or whether it's self-coloured. Not sure about that. Most of the tanks they've done are red. I think there's one blue one. The rest are red, so I don't know if it is self-coloured and that's why so many of them are red, because that simplifies production. Yeah, I'm not sure, but they look fine. The finish on it is okay, if a little bit plasticky, I suppose. The chassis definitely is painted and that looks different, so yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we've got the lettering on the side. This is an Era 7 model, so it does have the sort of high voltage danger signs printed on as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah, lots of decoration on the tanks, as you can see. The chassis and sole bar, this is very well decorated as well. All sorts of prints, most of them you actually can read, which is good to see. So there's a lot going on there. Plus there's a few other separately painted parts, such as these little lamp brackets here. Again, obviously these are separately fitted. Detail-wise, this model is amazing, and I think this is what mitigates the price a little bit. Yes, it's expensive, but look at everything that's going on here. So great axle boxes and springs. Those look very realistic. The brake handle and all the associated rods and such, these are all very fine and separately fitted, of course. And then if we look underneath the wagon, you can see the extent of the detail and the brake rigging. So the underside of the chassis, that's all fully detailed. You can see we've got the brake cylinder there and all the rigging connected to that. And we've got brakes on every wheel. In fact, 2 brakes on every wheel. So there's some pretty complex brake rigging on here, it must be said. And of course the NEM couplings are buried beneath that brake rigging, hence why there are instructions on how to remove those. I don't think I'll try to do that though. And we do indeed have NEM couplings, like I say, tension locks pre-fitted with a great bit of rotation on them, so hopefully those will work excellently. Then in terms of the buffer beams, we've got quite a bit of detail pre-fitted actually. We've got the hooks there, of course, vacuum pipes there, and also the metal buffers. The buffers, they're not cheap plastic, they're turned metal, and they're also sprung. Look at that, absolutely brilliant. Of course, deeply unnecessary, but this is a £40 wagon, so it's got the features to match. That's great. Okay, then we've got the tank itself, of course, which sits into its own little caddy, which has quite a lot of detail to it in itself. The chains holding the tanks in place under tension, these are quite interesting as well, because we've got like screw-link couplings in there. Do you think they repurpose screw-link couplings for this, or do they just use the same sort of idea? I don't know, they look just like screw links. But yeah, these are separately fitted. They're not real chains, which again is a bit of a shame for the money, because they do sort of kind of sit perfectly straight, but then again, they would be under tension, so I guess that's a fair enough compromise. Plus it makes them less likely to sort of break apart or tangle if you were to remove them. Again, they're removable. I don't think I'll try to do it, but you can take them off if you want. Then we've got this tiny little pressure gauge up here. I'm guessing that's a pressure gauge. Is that to show the level of the tank, or so that you can keep an eye on the internal pressure? I don't know. But anyway, that's got its own separately fitted pipe going up towards the top of the tank there, where it disappears inside. Yeah, marvellous attention to detail. So there you have it. I think that's pretty much everything there is on offer here. This model will not be for everybody. There are plenty of people who don't want £40 rolling stock no matter how good it is, and I think that's fine. I guess I'm one of them. If I was putting a big train together, I wouldn't be buying models like this. But as a one-off, or as something that is deliberately very expensive, but expensive so that every stop can be pulled out, I think this is a beautifully done piece of rolling stock. Is it quite worth £40? Well, that's up to you. But is the quality there? Yes, on the whole, I think so. Is the complexity there? Yes, I think it is. And it's also a relatively niche thing. You know, just over 100 of these in real life. It's not going to be for every modeler. So I think the price is what it is. It's certainly not a cheap and nasty wagon sold at ludicrous prices. So there's certainly nothing dodgy going on here. I think it's just the kind of thing that you'll have to make your mind up for yourself over. This will either be for you or it won't be. But how does this perform? Hopefully the wheels will loosen up a little bit as it runs. Do the couplings work, and how does it look as part of a train? Well, let's find out. So, like I say, I think this is a model that people are going to want to own, but the big question is, how do you justify it, and how do you crowbar it onto your layout? So, for mine, mine's Era 7, so I've just decided to take the easy way out and make this a preservation era train. So I've got the Bluebell, the SECR P-Class preserved, and I've just put a bit of a random goods train together, a bit like, let's say, the Great Central Railway might do today, just to show people a goods train in operation. And hey presto, I've got an SECR P-Class hauling this much later wagon in a way that is not farcically unrealistic, but there's other ways you can get around it. I think if you really fancy one of these, you can get this into the layout. Anyway, how free rolling is the tanker? Well, not very. I set this down Gordon's Hill. I couldn't get it to sustain a roll. It stopped underneath the passenger footbridge. That's as far as it went. So not very impressed. Obviously, again, as a very expensive wagon, you'd want this to be free rolling. Now, it might be after this is run in, provided the brakes aren't pressing against the wheels, it might be that this will free up and be better. So I will test that again later, but for now, yeah, it's not very free rolling. Some people appreciate having wagons that don't constantly roll away on them. That's fine, but this is, you know, beyond that. This is pretty darn stiff. Whether they're all like that or not, I'm not sure. Anyway, the couplings, let's try that. We've got a Bachmann wagon coupling first. And the Bachmann couplings do tend to be at the right height, and yeah, that has worked. And then we've got an Oxford tanker behind. The Oxford couplings not quite as good, so I might have to, oops, B-Class stopped on the points. I might have to assist it with that, but we shall see. Oh, no, I didn't. Ah, no, it's got it. So couplings, they seem absolutely fine. And before I run this around the layout, let's send it over the points. Oh, goodness me, not my favourite. And let's just make sure it's nice and stable on the tracks. There we go. You can see what a tiny little tanker this is. Yeah, definitely something people are going to want to own. Right, come on P-Class, it's not enjoying these points. It needs to warm up a bit, I think. Right, opening the point. Oh, let's open that one as well. And then they've got to go through all open points. Well, that's looking good. I didn't even see it jump. In fact, none of this rolling stock jumped. So that's a pretty good sign. I wonder if my track's a bit dirty behind these sidings. I'm a bit cheeky with my track cleaning. I only clean the the regularly used sections. But anyway, I'm not testing the P-Class. Goodness me, I will have to clean that siding. But yeah, anyway, not a single issue with the tank. Right, let's get a few laps under our belt then, see if it frees up a bit. Look how tiny it is next to that Oxford tanker. Yeah, it is an awesome little thing. What a good choice of model to make as well. It's the kind of thing that as soon as you see it, you want it, but you also know as a manufacturer that you're probably not going to get this thing duplicated. It's not like the Lomac where, you know, it's something that more people have heard of. Yeah, this is a random little thing. I was very surprised when I first saw it, but I also thought, yeah, well, I'll be having one of those. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's just a very, very sound product choice. But then of course, choosing the product is only the first step. You've then got to make it. And I think the way they've made this is just marvelous. There is so much detail here. The quality is pretty good. It works fine. You know, it is a shame that even given the bearings, it's not free rolling. We'll see if it frees up later on. So yeah, that's a pity. But on the whole, it's a very, very impressive model. I don't know about the price. I feel like if this cost the same as your typical Rapido wagon, which themselves are very expensive, I would have said, yeah, I can totally get the price. £40 is quite hard to part with for something like this. It's the same price as that Lomac. You know, it's a lot of money. That is a shame. But it is a premium model. There's no doubt about it. And you do look at this thing and think, wow, this looks just like a real vehicle, just scaled down to 00. So yeah, it's hard to say really that this is too expensive or that it's a rip-off or that it's not worth it, because it's a damn good model. But yeah, I have to try and seriously evaluate whether models are worth what they cost. And yeah, this is a tricky one. But overall, yeah, a very enjoyable model. Right, so I've left it running a good while now, so I think it's safe to give it the rolling test again. See if it's any better. That was quite a generous nudge. And okay, so yeah, it has improved, but it's still not great. It only just made it barely past the footbridge. So yeah, the bearings are great. It's lovely to see bearings. This should last quite a long while because of the bearings, but it doesn't seem to have helped in terms of free rolling. I've got plastic bearinged wagons which roll much better. So yeah, shame about that. At least we've given it a fair chance though. Let's have some ratings then for these demountable tank wagons. Level of detail is marvellously impressive. I've given it 4.5 stars, so the moulding quality is amazing. Loads of great decoration. The brake rigging is incredibly intricate, all separately fitted. That looks marvellous as well. We've got sprung buffers, we've got couplings for the coupling hooks. There's a lot of detail here for a very small wagon. It's not quite a perfect detail score though, because some of the plates on board are not properly readable, they haven't come out that well. And also the couplings provided, the screw links, the instanters, those are not real chains as they are on some models. I think on such a premium model as this, you want every possible stop pulling out, you want every possible detail looking perfect. Similarly, performance is good enough, it's not derailing, it's not flipping off the track, it's not coming off on the points, nothing like that. But it's not a very free rolling wagon. You know, I see a lot of cheaper rolling stock which rolls perfectly freely. I think I do have to mark this down for being such a stiff runner. So performance 4 star, everything else is fine, the couplings, everything else spot on. It's just not very free rolling. The quality then, this is another impressive area. So this is a very complex model, right? Yet all of the details have been perfectly applied. I didn't see any wonky parts, nothing was loose, nothing has broken off, I saw no visible glue. The build quality is excellent. The paintwork is faultless as well, no smudging, nothing like that. Very, very crisp paintwork. It's just there are some visible moulding marks on some of the parts which haven't been polished out, mainly the sort of frame that holds the tank. Plus that part is also quite badly warped, it doesn't sit flat. Again, for a very premium model that otherwise is absolutely perfect, this did stand out to me as being a little bit dodgy looking. So again, it's a minor thing, but I have had to mark it down just 1/2 star for that. The biggest issue with this though is the price. So value for money, I've given 3-star. £40 is quite a lot of money. Now, this is not a rip-off or anything. You can see why this model should be quite expensive. It is complex, there is a lot going on here, but is it quite worth £40? I'm not too sure. I think if it was perfect across the board and every single stop had been pulled out, then I would say, yeah, £40 is the right price. As it is, we have seen more complex models than this, and £40 is a lot of money. So I've given it middle of the road 3-star. It's not terrible value, but it's the weakest area of the model. So overall then, 7.99 out of 10 is the score, and the grade is B. I think in order to get an A, this would need to be more competitively priced. If this was £30 or even £35, I'd have been much more impressed with this. But anyway, into the logbook this goes, and it is still in the top 10, I mean, as it should be. Marvellous work this. And it's 7th place above Hornby's YMO wagon and below Bachmann's Press Flow. Bachmann's Press Flow is a good example of a more complex model, more complex, and it actually cost me £5 less. So not brilliant value, but certainly a brilliant model. So there you have it then folks, that is Ellis Clark's demountable tank wagon, and I'm very impressed. Yeah, this is, I think, even better than the Lomac from last year. Yes, it's detailed, it seems to be accurate, it's nicely made, all of this, but forget all that, it's enjoyable to run. It's the kind of model that you see, you want to put it onto your track, you want to couple it up to a train, you want to see it trundling around. It's just a fun model. I don't know what it is it the colour, is it the size, is it how sort of eccentric it looks? I'm not sure, but it's just an enjoyable wagon that brings a smile in a way that sort of 10-ton steel open wagons just don't. I can't put my finger on it, but hopefully you know what I mean. So thank you very much for watching folks. If you want to pick one of these up, like I say, I've got affiliate links down in the description, but we will leave that one there for now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next review. All right, cheers folks, you take care.